Back in 1967, I left school and went into the city, as a lot of my generation did. The city then was a wonderful institution. Its motto was "My word is my bond." People laugh at that sort of thing now, but that's how, broadly speaking, it used to be. Of course, there were a few scoundrels around, and nobody would pretend it worked absolutely perfectly, but broadly speaking, that it was a pretty wonderful institution. Over the years, it's built up to producing profit for UK PLC to the tune of 40% of GDP. So it's served the country extremely well. I'm very disappointed now, as I've seen over recent years, the demise of the City of London, and it's gone down and down and down. And this recent terrible crisis in the banking system, which started not with Lehman Brothers, as scoundrel, devious politicians and regulators would have you believe. It started with social legislation from politicians, the Community Reinvestment Act in America, which threw banking due diligence systems out of the window. It was deemed to be a great idea by lunatic, stupid politicians that everybody should be able to get a mortgage regardless of their ability to repay. So all sorts of the wrong sections of society in America were allowed to get mortgages because the banks weren't able to ensure that they only lent on their basis of due diligence. And this, of course, was where the toxic debt started. Of course, then, as we all know, greedy banks wrapped it all up in bogus instruments and passed it on, and the contagion spread to all around the world. And this has been the great problem. The regulatory authorities, and particularly the Financial Services Authority, has failed absolutely dismally when it was handed over, regulation of banking was handed over from the Bank of England to the Financial Services Authority by the current Prime Minister. And the rest, of course, is history. It's been an absolute shambles. One must ask oneself, what is the point of these regulatory authorities? They're all the same people. They're led by the great and the good. They have no experience of anything very much, other than that they're friends of the incumbent at number 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister of the day. They get to lead these wonderful quangos on salaries and pensions that we can only dream about. And since 1986, when the first Regulatory Finance Act came in, we've seen all sorts of problems, haven't we? We've seen the demise of the equitable life, the NPI, which nobody talks about, but equally appalling, the NPI, the United Provident Institution, the London Life, split caps. We've seen regulatory failure after regulatory failure. Do we see any humility or any contrition? No, we don't. The FSA have just given themselves a 10% salary increase, 15% bonuses across the card. No heads have rolled, all the same old people are there, and we're getting all this bogus talk about we've had light regulation before and it's now going to be heavier. It isn't. It's never been light regulation. It's been prescriptive. It's been box ticking. 4,000 people now work in some form for the FSA. Very few of whom have any serious experience at all. And it's reflected in the recent advert for the head of the Financial Ombudsman Service to replace Walter Merricks, where the first line is said, no knowledge or history of financial services necessary. We've learnt absolutely nothing over this. There's no reason I can see that this terrible crisis won't repeat itself in years to come in some mutated form, because we haven't learnt anything. I suggest we need to look to Australia and Canada for sensible regulation, pragmatic regulation. They haven't had these problems in the old dominions. We need to get away from the self-serving, box-ticking, great and the good, who are desperately pleased with themselves, who wave their arms about at Mansion House dinners, pretending it's everybody else's fault. It isn't everybody else's fault. This isn't an act of God. We haven't been struck by lightning, we've been struck by incompetence. And we really have to sort it out. Otherwise, it's just going to happen again.